July 25th, 2024, 8:44 p.m. Art as meditation grieving my voice. TWCW will discuss constant debilitating pain, enduring child abuse, suicidal ideation and attempts disability, cptsd, and follow the poem as I defang those griefs and triggers to end 1,500 words later. Sublime peace. Hash, hash, hash. It's exhausting and hilarious how people have argued with me about the tenor and mood expressed with this rap of my voice when I spent decades refining the skills of public speaking from the difficulty I had learning how to be understood as a toddler with a deformed palate through so much performing in high school and college and graduate school, then teaching pottery. Don't forget decades of poetry, hundreds of podcasts and readings, not to huge crowds, not even to those all that interested in anyone's poems. So I had to push my limits. Eventually, I learned to silence a room of drunks with one verse. That was my peak, I think, because it has always been difficult for me to modulate tone and volume. I remember the awe of a Spanish professor realizing that I had figured out how to mimic accent and sound because of this disability, since he saw his own life experience reflected in me. Oh, heaven help me, when I tried to speak French, that taught me my limits came from the mechanics of my biology. More than anything else, I studied what my voice could and could not do. So I know what I have lost. I know what it costs me now to not be comprehended. Any buffer of compassion bought by youth and social status has long since dissolved. As sublime as my solitude is, and as deep inside this safe home I have built within the compassion and forgiveness of a practice in art, there is a price to be paid for being a solitary, given how much of society only values women who have had children and come with a man attached. Not once in my entire life have I really had a clear vision of what I look like to others, how I seem, and it took until this disabling to realize that's because I was never negotiating my actual appearance, but how closely I could match what they projected onto my monochromatic pale. Age and this facial paralysis augmented this effect. I have stopped being a person and just become a screen. But right now, it's my voice. That just breaks my heart. I can speak, but I cannot really control tone or pacing because I struggle so hard to breathe and to push the words out. The paralysis creates issues on top of the mechanics of sound, not wanting to form in my throat. Talking hurts. Every word comes with a cost. Nearly everyone, but for those who knew me well before, interprets my voice as angry now, no matter what. It has been tested over and over. The examples make me sound like I dwell in grievance, but this rejection of my truth, because I have lost the ability to state it clearly, haunts my heart tonight, and I know no other way to extract the sting from suffering without pulling it into the puddle of light. So the memory triggering me tonight, begging for help at the ER. In the worst agony of my life, I was screamed at for being terse, for not being kind and obsequious, for refusing to force these vocal cords to produce dulcet tones, as though I wouldn't have if I could, despite warning them about this disability. When I first arrived, I surrendered any realistic chance on ever shifting any social interaction, done face to face, in my favor, that night, being told I was too stupid to understand pain, but that did not mean I would stop working to solve my problems, for I am relentless, so I keep trying, but it does not make a difference. I cannot get people who can help to believe I am in pain and needy. I cannot force compassion. Oh, you look fine, one said with their gaze solidly over my left shoulder. No one would treat you differently if you just spoke more clearly. Try harder. You can barely tell. Half your face doesn't move. You're just imagining this bias. You need to advocate for yourself better. I wrote a book about it. I gently argued the only way I know how to advocate without a voice is on Amazon with the others, while I sighed as they laughed. It turned out they did not Google. The disbelief is a trigger now. Instead of verifying that I tell the truth, it is charted that I lie. Instead of writing that my art is ugly, it is that it doesn't exist in a real way. A 30-year career swept away due to lack of outward success because the treatment recommended was to try to stop creating because me being a poet. It's impossible. How do you know? You are right. A friend stopped me, mid-story, full of wonder. What I was talking about, knowing how people treated me, had changed. Easy issues for which I would have gotten help a decade ago are shrugged off with, you aren't showing any pain. I know I'm right, because I am feeling it, because I know, far beyond my current facial dysfunction, that my first trip to the ER was when I was 6 months old, because my brother collapsed a lung, punching me when I cried, as my parents had encouraged him to do. You might have been a baby. My mother would take a long drag, offer a cigarette, pausing the story before smiling. But you weren't stupid. You stopped fucking crying. My relationship with pain will not be like yours. I have had to learn how to endure. Forsaken and alone, when no one would help me, over and over. From my earliest memories, I know because I have lived this life, I have built this entire corpus of art that is spread across the internet. For the void to enjoy, because I know that you do not see me clearly, because for so long, neither did I. I have never known what I looked like to others, and it is still true, because I keep falling in love with this life, breath after breath, because what I see is the mercy I give myself when my face slowly melts like one of Dolly's clocks, and I cannot sit up and stand without nauseating vertigo, which really feels like geometry and physics. Our being is fickle, as gravity is reliable, always catching me when my legs give out. How it aches to have so much to say, to be so full of love and joy, but out of the view. That, believe me, when I do talk about my health and how much help I need, most can only see struggle and how they would want to die rather than live this life. How much easier it is to believe that I am lying than to think I might have something to say while waste resources helping someone who cannot stop yapping about love when living a life most would see as a curse. And with this refusal to get better, that would mean helping would never end. The impulse is still to argue, to fight like I did as a child, to make someone believe that I am worth protecting and loving. But the real gift that swallows me in gratitude is that I do not need it for this exhale to seduce the next inhale in, with the promise that delight will be woven out of dream and overwhelming sensation. I can grieve deeply that I have no voice left and no confidence. Anyone but myself will read these words without that limit, denting my peace. I remain so beautifully enough, the external view of this life, the one which hurt me, like poison I kept ingested, that I held for so long and hated myself so much. I kept trying to die. That one has become incomprehensible to me on levels that I did not know existed, that it cost me help. While not a fair trade is one I would have made, even if I'd known at 9. My fate, as I beat out these verses from this mountain of privilege and practice, I dance in letter and line, more beauty, living a life saturated with loving, unfolds than I could have ever imagined, and I am creative, as you would not believe. All that came through me in this condition, which feels even kinder. Somehow, these lines were ones I needed to read. Denial never bought me anything other than additional time, soaked in suffering. The only path through grief I have ever found was through it, and here we are. I wrote long enough to become poetry, even if what I write sounds like gibberish. You let me hold the pain of my loss in this piece until my loving turned everything into forgiveness, and now I flow, unburdened, in letter and line. Thank you.
It sounded like the poem farted at the end. Now on to different art, not practice.